So there's a lot of conversation going on in the chat right now about the Black mentorship burnout is
Mm,
real. People are
it is.
being called upon to, to advocate not just for themselves but for other people, and at the same time that they're experiencing they're having the experience of discrimination and implicit bias themselves.
Yeah, I'll
And
tell you.
I want to get there's a particular Angelie had a question, and I'm trying to I want okay, how do we in the middle and later stages of our careers meet this moment? So that's kind of a mishmash of
That's a
several people's questions, but I think they're all interrelated.
totally got it. Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and they are related. So there was a guy at Google who I was once interviewing, a black technologist. So of course you can imagine a black technologist who worked at Google, and he was on a panel. And one of the things he said to me was, I'm on every panel. And I think it's important because I'm one of there's not that many of me, right? I'm a software guy who codes at Google. Like,
Yeah,
I'm a little bit rare.
yeah.
And he's like, so it's really important to me to be on those panels because I want people to see me and say, oh, this is something I could do if you're younger. He said, but the way I'm judged is the projects that I'm doing. I get no points for being on panels, right? No one says, oh, you know what, he did 3 panels, he's been. And so I think that that's part of the answer for the middle people and the senior people, right? Understanding that mentoring takes time, takes energy. And so those mentors actually have to get the credit for doing that, that's a piece of a job. You know, if they were booking town cars, you'd be like, yeah, well, booking town cars takes 2 hours a day. That's a job. It's a separate job, you know. But mentoring is actually harder, I would argue, than booking town cars and takes a long time. And so I think his issue was, I'm doing this thing, it's important, the company values it, but when it comes to thinking about my compensation and my time, there's no place where it fits in, here's what he does. I am a software engineer and it's all about my projects, but I spend time doing panels, which everyone would argue is valuable. So I think it's the same thing. I think senior people have to have those conversations
Mhm.
with some of the leadership that are often, most frequently, not people of color, right? And explain that and figure out, okay, so then how do we think about compensating those people, giving those people time? How do we think about creating spaces for these awkward conversations? How do we make sure that awkward conversations are okay? And people get to ask stupid questions and say things that are bad and awkward and inappropriate. And everyone says, well, here, let me explain to you why that's not a good thing. When I was covering a story in Thailand, I had little kids at the time, and I would rest my hand on the heads of kids who were kind of like up to my hip, you know? And finally, someone took me aside and said, touching a child on the head in this culture is one of the most disrespectful things you can do. I was so mortified. I had no idea. But I was so grateful, right? Like, this guy didn't have to say that to me. And I was covering a story, right? So everybody was being very, very nice to me. They wanted to have a good story told. And
Mhm.
I actually was so appreciative that he was saying, what you're doing is wrong. It's culturally wrong. Don't be an idiot and let me save you from yourself. And so I've tried to have that same feeling, right? Like, when we navigate these awkward conversations about race or gender, whatever, you have to have this idea of like, help me help you. And I'm going to be the one who tells you this because maybe other people won't, that when you use this word, it's not okay. When you call someone this, it's not okay. That
Right.
word there is actually a slur. Maybe you thought you're being funny, you are not, right? And the person who does that is being very kind and being very helpful to someone who is trying to navigate a space that they may not feel very comfortable in. I think that can be the role of senior people, of we're going to help be the conduit. So our younger employees who really need to be focused on their work
Mhm.
don't have to be having these higher order and higher level fights, arguments, conversations, which are very stressful and very frequently derailing of their careers.